Meetings Act, all of you have a right to attend public meetings, and all of you have a right to voice your opinions in regards to the functioning of our school district, including the performance of our staff. We, however, as board members, are restricted from commenting on the performance of our staff without giving notice to the staff and going through the contractual rights that staff has. So we, as board members, without giving a particular employee the right to a closed session to discuss anything that could be in the realm of evaluation or of some type of action being taken. So the board cannot comment in regards to First Element, but you are welcome.
I have,
Do you currently have it set up to have two people do this?
I do. If you'll allow me the time, it takes me about 6.5 minutes. If you want me to remain with the 5
That's
minutes,
fine.
I have somebody to pick up
If you
that last
prefer to do it
minute.
yourself, do it yourself.
Okay, and then I'll provide the school board with a copy. There's a few things I'll be referencing. I apologize, I only have one copy, but there's a few things in there that will be brought up with what I'm speaking about. My name is Sarah McCord. I'm a parent of 2 students here at West Iron. I have a son who's a senior, and I have a son who's in 3rd grade. And as I go through this, you'll kind of see why I'm here and why I'm speaking tonight. The things that have happened in the last like 4 to 5 days have changed immensely as to what I'm going to be saying here tonight. I am working very hard on this. I have contacted many people. I'm not ranting. I'm not headhunting. I'm not trying to speak ill. I'm here to speak the facts. Before launching into the bulk of my concerns about the manner in which our school system is apparently being run, I want to share the most recent developments in a situation that has spun completely out of control. Last week I was contacted by a school employee who told me that Mr. Thompson sent Mr. Schobald, another school employee, to Ace Hardware to talk to the owners about my employment there. Mr. Biggery was told by Mr. Schobald that he would no longer be charging on behalf of West Iron County Schools, as Sarah McCord was speaking out against the school. Mr. Biggery told Mr. Schobald that I was no longer employed there, as I had left for other employment a couple of weeks earlier. Mr. Schobald said that's all he needed to know. The conclusion: the school will continue to patronize Ace now that they know I am no longer working there. Obviously, I was beyond shocked and appalled. I have worked for the Biggery family for several years. I know for a fact they continually donate to school functions, they pay for advertising for sports and the yearbook and things of the like. They are good people in this community, and this is how the administration treated them. I did contact the Nick and Ron Biggery in person, hoping that this could not be true. It was confirmed to me that this conversation did in fact take place. Upon discussing this at my new place of employment, Northland Service, I was informed that Roy Polich, the school board president, had contacted my boss, Chris Hughes, and expressed his concerns about my employment there, as I was causing trouble at the school. In addition to this, Mr. Polich made it a point to remind Chris of the amount of business he brings to Northland. In the context of bullying, I demand the actions of the superintendent, Chris Thompson, and board president, Roy Polich, be investigated. This attempt to bully me at my place of employment is for one reason and one reason only. I am asking that staff members be held accountable for their actions leading up to and following the Mike Barker incident. Mike's pink hair, though it was a catalyst for all incidents that followed, is not what I am here to discuss. His hair was simply the first domino in a series of events that have brought to light many areas of concern within our school district. When Mike was asked to leave the track bus, 2 very distinct threats were made to any student who chose to support Mike at that time, or planned to support him in the future. The first threat was from Mrs. Christy Baruti, who told the girls' track team that 1, they were not to discuss the Barker incident, 2, they were to agree with administration, and 3, they would be removed from the track team if they showed support for Mike Barker by wearing pink, dyeing their hair pink, or signing any petition. The second threat came from Mr. Mike Baruti and was directed at the boys who stepped off the bus in support of Mike Barker. My son was one of those boys. Mr. Baruti yelled at the boys and told them he had lost respect for them. He went on to say he was going to start making phone calls to revoke the all-star positions that they had earned during football season. They were told to get back on the bus. Truth be told, I was mad. I took to social media to express my dissatisfaction with the school. As a result, I was contacted by parent after parent, each one expressing concern and outrage, some sharing their own experiences. The more I heard, the more I questioned the manner in which our administration worked. Therefore, I requested Mrs. Barudi's personnel file. I received an incomplete file spanning more than 12 years, yet the file contained only 5 evaluations. In addition to this, I discovered there were 0 complaints in Mrs. Barudi's file, though I was told by several parents they had contacted Mr. Thompson directly, bypassing Mr. Barudi as they should have. When I contacted Mr. Thompson regarding my concerns, he admitted there was missing evaluations. He said he remembered doing them, but had no idea what had happened to them. As if to make me feel better, he told me there was a teacher who had no personnel file whatsoever. It was missing entirely. I find this to be very concerning. I would imagine other parents would agree, and I am assuming the school board will take an immediate interest in the state of the staff personnel files. When speaking with Mr. Thompson, I specifically referenced one family's complaint. Their situation was very well known. In fact, attorneys were involved at one point. Mr. Thompson expressed to me that as he recalled the situation I spoke of, it had happened in 2010, which was correct. He then stated he really couldn't remember the specifics as, quote, 2010 was a very busy year with severe budget issues. While I'm glad he can recall the budget, I find it odd that he can't quite remember the loud complaints of a family who demanded action for the mistreatment of their daughter. One would think there would be some type of reference to this in Mrs. Barudi's personnel file. There was not. Mr. Thompson informed me that unless he receives a written complaint, nothing has to be included in a personnel file. I do not doubt this is the policy. However, I do feel it is his responsibility to inform anyone filing any type of complaint that they need to do so in writing. It is simply irresponsible of him to do anything other than that. Based on the parents I spoke with, they were unaware of their wasted breath. They truly thought by speaking to him matters would be handled. And in the best interest of the students, he should responsibly acknowledge any complaint, written or otherwise, and take any appropriate action if necessary. As a parent, I would expect nothing less from anyone in his position. And to offer assistance to the board, I do believe there are a couple of people here tonight that have brought copies of their original complaints or the supporting documents for the file. In addition, I am handing in my complaints this evening. With the board in attendance in a room full of people, I don't expect there to be any lost or misfiled paperwork. The school has a very serious problem concerning the behavior of Mr. and Mrs. Barudi. The problem is magnified when one considers that there is only one link in the chain of command. I have been told by Roy Polich that, quote, the husband never has supervised the wife. Similarly, Mr. Thompson told me that he and not Mr. Barudi is directly in charge of Mrs. Barudi. However, in a letter of reprimand in her file, Mr. Thompson himself told Mrs. Barudi if there was an incident of importance, she should have contacted Mr. Barudi to investigate. If Mrs. Barudi is having a conflict with another school employee, I can't imagine having her husband investigate would be the best option. In addition to the question of who exactly is in charge of managing Mrs. Barudi, there is an issue with Mrs. Barudi's perceived power. In an evaluation dated June 2013, Mr. Thompson admonishes Christie's unprofessional behavior. He also references the fact that Mrs. Barudi has created a perception among staff that she can conduct herself beyond reproach. If the staff can see this, the students and parents clearly can as well. I have shared a handout with the board, and on that handout there are comments that show her inappropriate interactions with staff members coincide with her inappropriate interactions with students and parents. I have also provided the board with a paper written by Professor Alan McAvoy entitled Teachers Who Bully Students. When you read McAvoy's article, you will find mirrored responses to the statements from the parents and students. We teach zero tolerance for bullying in our schools. It seems only fair that a zero tolerance policy should include staff as well. What is happening is wrong. Plain and simple, it is wrong. I look forward to the response from the administration and school board regarding the concerns brought forth.
Thank you. Since I was able to read yours all in different places on Facebook, I would like to respond to yours. Dean Schulwald, where are you? Did Chris Thompson ask you to go to Biggers?
He did not.
As to the comments you made about me personally speaking to your employer inquired of me as to whether I would be uncomfortable going to your place of employment because you were there. I specifically informed him I was not. He asked me if I wanted to do something about your employment there. I told him I did not. He then told me he was gonna talk to you in hopes that you would tone it down so it wouldn't hurt his business.
He listened to you, you listened to him.
I am listening.
Be respectful.
And if at any time I wanted to go down there and tell him that, I probably could have. But in fact, the option was put forth to me, whether I was comfortable going there with you there, and I said I was. The fact of the matter is, I didn't even know you were there. So, I don't know what else to say about that. I called Chris Hughes, he's in Mexico. But if you want to clarify that, we can have him issue a statement to you. In regards to the, what Christy Birdie said or didn't say to the track members, how many girls' track members did you personally interview?
I spoke with the parents of 3 of the girls.
Okay. Did you speak to any of the girls?
I had text messages from one of the girls. I did not speak to her face to face.
Okay. I'm used to courtrooms, and hearsay is hearsay, but there's a whole group of them over there if you'd like to talk to them afterwards. And I agree, there is distinctions from one to the next about exactly what was said.
If you'll recall, you and I discussed this on the phone, and you basically acknowledged what I was saying. Your exact words were, it's kind of a harsh paraphrasing, is what you told me in regards to those comments when you contacted me.
Actually, after I spoke to you, you misquoted me on Facebook, but you went through a litany of items in regards to Christy Birdie, and I said to you, what does that have to do with what we're talking about, or okay, where do we go from here with it? It wasn't an acknowledgement of me of anything, but I do understand that Christy did make some comments, but the content of those comments, I think, should come from the students themselves that heard it. And I specifically, and I understand the feared comments that you made, I specifically made inquiries as to whether anybody, the words, or anything close to the words that you would be removed from the track team were ever said. And there's a whole bunch of them over in the audience here, and you're welcome to ask anyone. We have accumulated information in regards to what occurred and what didn't occur. The first time I saw that was a few days ago, and I asked for it to become more complete, and we're currently working on that in relation to what happened or didn't happen, and we cannot comment on it. In regards to your request about the committee, I appointed the committee. That's the job of the board and the president. We did it choosing a female and a male from the categories that were listed in that press release. The purpose of that committee, though, is to review the part of the athletic code that refers to excessive hairstyles and in regards to what is team and what is individual. And we took 2 members from the community at large, 2 staff coaching members, 2 students, and went through under that format. And they tried to meet last week. Mike Gallivalli was appointed, who's a past coach, who's no longer a coach, as a chairperson to try to put our meetings together. There's 2 board members on that. And they attempted to get their meeting together last week, but couldn't, and will be meeting shortly. And any of you are welcome for input on that. And there is a substantial amount of debate in regards to coaches wanting team unity and individuals wanting to express themselves. And that board is going to give recommendations to, that committee is going to give recommendations to this board in regards to the athletic code. In regards to the personnel file, there's a few things that I think need to be clarified. When you talk about you were given an incomplete file, you were given everything that's in that file. so that you requested. The facts remain that prior to any of this administration, or actually anybody in that administration building being in their current position, there were evaluations that are plain missing. Okay. Mr. Thompson had nothing to do with it. He didn't even exist in that building for the time period that they're missing. What we can do about that, I have no idea. The filing or keeping of those, and the prior policy on teacher evaluations was that through their probationary period, they were evaluated. After that, there was no requirement of being evaluated. And different superintendents did their evaluations, a lot of them or none of them. Currently, we're into our second full year, third year of required evaluations. And with the new legislation, every teacher must be evaluated annually. So what you have there in the personnel file you requested are her initial probationary evaluations, and then the last 3 years of evaluations that have been done under this administration. So when you talk about the, I'm sorry.
There was a probationary evaluation missing.
Right, so that's consistent with what everybody has, and nobody currently around here had anything to do with what was going on. Those people are retired or have left the district. So I don't know how I can solve that for you. I would, I'm sure we would all very much prefer that we went to a file and everything was there. In fact, when we looked for one file, we couldn't find it at all. But that's not something that happened with this current administration, with this current board, or in fact with the employees in the advocate. And you said there's no complaints in the file, and I have to distinguish again for you. And this goes back to the teachers' contracts and the rules and procedures that we're required to file. A personnel file never contains complaints. So anybody can file a complaint and it doesn't end up in the personnel file. There is a procedure through the discipline under the teacher's contracts that allows a complaint to be dealt with. If the complaint ends up in discipline, and there's a very distinct portion of the teacher's contracts, if it ends up in discipline, the discipline is put in the file in accordance with the contract. So nobody's contract ever has, nor could we legally put a complaint in the personnel file. The complaint has to be acted upon, and then if there's action taken, then that action taken in regards to some type of reprimand or some type of action, then only that part of it is allowed to be put in the file. Complaints are not allowed by law to be put in the file. Now, when you said people make complaints, they're wasting their breath, that's not true either. The fact remains that if the district wants to take disciplinary action in regards to a complaint, it must be put in writing. But we get complaints all the time, I get them at my office, that are acted upon, but they may or may not result in discipline at the level required to be put in the file. So when you say there's no complaints, there may be complaints, but what's put in the file are not complaints. You understand? Did I make that clear or cloudy?
No, that helps clarify it, thank you.
So when you talk about wasted breath, I mean, I probably get an email once a week. Last few weeks, I got 40 or 50 a day requesting that something be done, and I always make sure that those complaints go through the proper chain, and I get a response to the people, and I get a response to myself. And I think that's the way everybody here handles it. So complaints are never a waste of breath. If a complaint is to the extent that the person wants to pursue it and the district makes a decision they want to pursue it, then it has to be in writing. And there's nothing wrong with starting them off in writing. And we welcome written complaints. the fact of the matter is, we have requested written complaints on several occasions and have been refused to have those complaints put in writing. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, I just have a couple comments. I know previously I had talked to Mr. Thompson, this is before this incident, about something. And I made this point to the couple board members I was able to reach. I, as a mother who made very concerned and made a complaint about something else totally not related to this, and some time ago, and I was never informed nor never told that I should put it in writing. And my question to, this is something for you all to consider, of course, is if nothing goes in the file, it goes by this board that's currently here's memory. And then you get new members, they don't know. How do you keep track of, how is there a track record if there isn't anything placed there? That's what I would like to know.
Well, I understand that, but you have to go to the teachers union and ask them about whether they want all the complaints put in their file. I know what your answer is going to find out. But, and we get complaints that are fairly minor about things, and you get complaints that rise to the level of requiring discipline, and that's where it changes. I mean, many times we get a complaint about communication or how something's scheduled or those kind of things that no one would ever expect to rise to the level of discipline for a member of our staff. But I will personally assure you, if I see a complaint and the best way to contact me is by email, I'll make sure that you get a response.
I have a question. If we do have a complaint and the child writes a complaint about the teacher, who should get that complaint? Should the complaint that she's complaining, the complaint that she's complaining about the teacher, should the teacher she's complaining about, should that complaint go to that damn teacher?
No, it goes up the line of the chain
Well-
of command. Or you can start with me and I'll go backwards.
Okay,
Or you can start with any board member
well, thank you.
and we'll go back. I'll say that because I'm kind of being a spokesperson for our board tonight. And actually, your comments are supposed to be directed to the presiding officer, but I want you to all know that this board sits here when we were going through this budget crisis and nobody was here concerned. We were $250,000 approximately in the hole. We all voted to not pay us. So nobody on this board receives any compensation. We're all here for one purpose, and that's to better the education of our children and the environment our children live in. And that's the only reason we're here.
Good.
And we put in tireless hours. And I would love to see a crowd like this at the meetings when we get awards and acclimates for what's happened to our testing, our test results in this district, and what we've done to turn around the financial situation this district is in. But when you get awards and when our test results, we tested better than any other school district in the intermediate school district. I didn't get many comments about it. So, and I'm not asking for the comments because there's a lot of hard workers on this board, in this administration, and in our staff. And somebody should take the time to compliment them sometimes in addition to criticizing. I don't have anything wrong with criticizing. If we're all criticizing for the purpose to make this school district better for our children, and members of the public often come up with some suggestion that we adopt. There's nothing wrong with that. But we're all here on the same team. And if we're rowing in the same direction, we can make things better. Yes?
And I was just going to add to my other comment, and that is this. Yes, I think there's a lot of lovely people on the board that give their time, and I appreciate that. You have a lot of great coaches and a lot of great teachers. You also have a lot of busy parents and an economic time that's difficult, so they can't always attend. So I think we're all adult enough to realize those things. But my comment to you is, like you said, I think sometimes if people saw more concern over the issues that they bring forward, they may be more apt to come to an additional board meeting or two, because they really feel that they're being heard and something is happening. So that's just a comment back and forth to you. And when I was up there, I didn't hand these in, but I do have 2 written complaints for you as well, and I can give them to whomever at the end of the evening as well. Okay?
Yes.
I have one question in regard to, you had commented that, no, none of you had referred Mr. Schwollow, I don't know what part of the school he is, but to go to ACE on the school's behalf and ask about Sarah's position at ACE and whether or not that they would, continue to do business with them. Well, if that didn't come from you, what authority was there given, because I would assume that would be a board decision, whether you are gonna continue to do business with ACE or not. Where's the authority coming from? Why did that happen?
I didn't know anything about it until I read it in Sarah's synopsis yesterday.
Okay, so
And I
am I
had a very
correct?
brief conversation with Mr. Schwollow this morning about it. And the part that was most concerning to me was the reference to our superintendent sending him there. And I asked that question and was told that was not true.
Okay, so, but we still have a problem that, I mean, in essence, somebody went down there and was making a threat. If she was working there, that you were no longer, which I'd assume is a board decision, going to do business with them. That's way overstepping.
If that's what happened, that's true.
Yeah.